No doubt you guys are wondering why I'm in with such passion right now. Well, this video is a day late and left yesterday's slot completely empty for Skytember because my Wi-Fi decided to cut out. And I know what you're thinking, didn't it do that already this month? And you'd be correct. My Wi-Fi has gone on ahead and cut out twice in the same month. And this is after being completely fine all year round, and yet my Wi-Fi decides to crash not when I'm at work, but when I'm trying to upload my Skytember videos. It's not convenient, you know, when I'm trying to pump out stuff every single day here, so that's why the schedule has gone sideways, as my finger expressions were, well, expressing, one would say. But yeah, of all the times it could have chose to cut out twice in the same month, why September? Why couldn't it do this to me in August when I was doing bugger all? Why did it wait till September? Stupid Wi-Fi. So now with my rant about Wi-Fi aside, let me just say this much. When it comes to Wi-Fi and that useless piece of crap, more specifically, I wish I had a backstone that could smash it up because maybe then it would work a little bit better. But yeah, thanks for nothing, you useless piece of crap. So now moving on to the video at hand, it is exactly what the title would be alluding to. We're talking about something that the Skylanders franchise is notorious for, and that is the gimmicks which they introduced year in year out. Every single time they brought out a new game from Spyro's Adventure all the way towards the newest iteration within the franchise Imaginators, they had a new gimmick to go alongside that next generation of Skylanders. So that's exactly what we're going to talk about as soon as the intro has played itself out. Yo guys, I got a spark which I'm going to use to ignite the fire for a brand new Skytember video here on the channel. Now the main reason why this is going to be our one and only Skytember upload for today is because I was too busy spending the last few hours finally sorting out that Skylanders shelf, so it was no longer the cluttered mess that you saw from it yesterday. Although to be perfectly honest, it took me far too long to dish out all of these Skylanders from my shelf over there, because as you can tell it's a little bit scattered and a bit of a mess. As well as a little cameo from my Shulk amiibo up there. But anyway, moving back to the theme at hand, you guys will no doubt notice that presented even on my desk before you is a character representing their gimmick from a respective game that they were introduced in. So that is of course Spyro representing the gimmick of Spyro's Adventure, T-Rex representing the gimmick of Giants, then the Swappers known as Bushbuckler, and Blastone representing the game known as Skylanders Swap Force. Then we have of course Snapshot, Food Fight, and the Water Tiki, and the Life Hammer representing Trap Team. Then we have Spitfire and his vehicle, the Hot Streak, representing Superchargers, and finally, last but not least, we have Kingpin and the Creation Crystal, of course, representing Skylanders Imaginators. Now what's so annoying about this is that there's only two platforms which every single Skylanders game is available on, and that's the Xbox 360 and PS3. Well, unfortunately, I don't own Superchargers and Imaginators on 360, only the first four. And then for the PS4, I don't own the first two games because they were never released for that system, so that basically means that there's no consistency in the collection you see before you. So unfortunately, we're just going to have to deal with it for the way it is, and hopefully I'm not tearing apart any Microsoft and Sony fanboys by putting, you know, games from their two systems right next to one another. But anyway, why am I talking about gimmicks in this video? Well, I just thought it would make for a nice, interesting little discussion topic of all things. And after I'm done talking to you guys about each of these gimmicks, I'm also going to be ranking them, so that's going to be a fun way to conclude the video with. So starting off with Spyro right here. When Spyro's Adventure first came out, the game in of itself was a huge gimmick, and it effectively invented an entire new genre, because you could take your toy right here, and you could place them on a portal of power, and they would magically appear in the video game. It was really magical, excuse my pun, because of course that is Spyro's element. Although I have no idea why he's in that element, because fire would suit him much more with his fire-based abilities, though I suppose magic being kind of like the most iconic element, and then Spyro being the most iconic Skylander puts two and two together. So I suppose it's fitting when you look at it from that angle. But moving on to this gimmick at hand, what would happen is that inside this little base right here is a computer chip. And so naturally, the Portal of Power effectively works as a barcode scanner, so that then whenever you place a scanner on the portal, what happens is that the portal reads the information from that chip inside the base even, and then it transfers that data to your console so the scanner can be played in the game. It's really clever technology that, you know, creates the illusion of magic very, very well. It's almost like you are literally just taking a toy and bringing them to life in the video game, hence the toys to life stance. And that was emphasized not only in the marketing but the game itself as well, because the game had constant fourth wall breaks, speaking to you as the player who is known as a portal master, since you control these portals that send the Skylanders back to Skylands. So they made a gimmick and they incorporated it into the game very, very well in my personal opinion, and the fact that this gimmick created a whole new marketing ploy and a whole new genre for video games in their entirety and revolutionized the industry is what makes it Spyro's Adventure in and of itself a groundbreaking game. But moving on to Giants here. Now you might think that the gimmick of Skylanders Giants is, well, the Giants is literally part of the name, but as you saw once I started placing tricks onto the portal right here, the giant lights up, as do 8 core characters known as light core characters. So whilst giants were quite gimmicky at the time for being these massive powerhouse Skylanders, since then that gimmick has kind of, you know, been taken away by the Trap Masters and the Senseis, you know, being of the same size as those giants. But whenever you look back at the old interviews of Skylanders Giants, it was much less the actual giants themselves that they were pushing in the marketing, and much more so the light cores.
One of the things that I'm very proud about, you know, with Giants, we've got this big story to talk about, but built into these is this awesome new technology, which uses broadcast magical power to light the toys. Yep. So with no batteries at all, as you move these toys near the portal, they begin to glow.
Yeah, and we saw that in the presentation. So you took the toy, placed it on the portal, and as it approached the portal, the eyes lit up.
Yeah, the eyes and the weapon.
And so there's no battery in the toy?
No, we're it's all coming from the Portal of Power magically. No modifications. Your old Portal of Power works just fine. And it's so fun to take this guy or one of the other characters that have this lighting technology and just sort of put them close to the portal and then take them away with them close. I wish I could say it was just like a really sophisticated thing, but it's just like, light is good.
Yeah, my hands light up. Whoopee, let's play! Check out Lightcore in the all-new video game Skylanders Giants. Rated everyone 10 and up. Some toys and consoles sold separately.
They had entire trailers oriented around light cores, they had entire interviews oriented around light cores, and so the main gimmick of the game very quickly became the opportunity to make a Skylander figurine light up without the need for any sort of batteries. You simply just placed them on the portal and they did the work for you. So off and back on, off and back on. It's always interesting whenever you're dissecting light cores to just find out what's inside them and watching them tick, you could say, or seeing what makes them tick more specifically. But moving on to Skylanders Swap Force, this is a very interesting gimmick because what we have here is we have 4 different codes, although there are only 2 different Skylanders, and that's because there are 2 different codes per Swap Force character. So we have a top part and a bottom part with 2 completely different codes. So that way we can split up these characters and then we can interchange them and create whole new combinations. There are 16 of these in total, so naturally that means that we have 16 times 16 combinations in availability to us even, and 16 squared is 256. That's a lot of combinations to create out of 16 Swap Force characters. And as I was mentioned about earlier, the way how the gimmick works is simply put, there are magnets which magnetize the characters together, and so what happens is that when they're magnetized together, the computer chip within the top half and then the computer chip with the bottom half combine to make one entire code for the portal to read and transfer that data to for game, because every computer chip within a Skylander remembers for Skylanders upgrades, gold, leveling, progress. And so naturally, that portion of a chip, the memory part of a chip, is stored within the top half. So no matter what bottom half you use, the top half will have all of the gold, the money, and the levels of that particular combination. So yeah, very, very cool how that works. And of course, to perfectly showcase this gimmick, in the starter pack they gave you 2 Swap Force characters to work with, and that gave you 4 combinations, since 2 squared is, well, 4. But moving on to Trap Team, we have yet another really interesting gimmick. Because you see these traps right here? Yeah, they're pretty lifeless. But whenever you defeat a villain, you can place them onto the portal, and that villain's life essence gets transported into the trap, so that then, the next time you place a trap on the portal, that villain will be inside there, and you can play as them. In fact, you can tag them out between the villain and the Skylander at will. And so to go alongside these traps, you had your companion pieces, which were the Trap Masters. Now these Trap Masters were very overpowered in comparison to the cores, because what the Trap Masters would do is they would deal increased damage against the boss fights, they would increase a villain's timer within the game, and that was very important, because the longer you could play as a villain meant the less damage your Skylander would take, because when you're tagged out as a villain, your Skylander cannot take any damage. And the aim of the game is to lose as many Skylanders as possible, so the villains became very useful in that regard. And to add to the gimmick that you're bringing life to this toy, the villain would speak through the mic, cleverly hidden in the front right here, and then they would give you clever little one-liners to basically convey that there was life within that toy. So they effectively took the gimmick from the first game, bringing toys to life, and they switched it so that now they're bringing life to toys. But anyway, I was mentioning earlier about how the Trap Masters were very overpowered in several categories. In fact, not only were they overpowered in their attacks and gave the villains longer timers, but they were also the only characters capable of opening the elemental gates in that game, which had a lot of controversy behind it, because of course the developers were forcing 8 new Trap Masters down your throat. In fact, 9 to be more specific, because you got the water one in the starter pack, and then you had to get the other 7 elements, as well as the 2 new elements in the game, the light and dark elements, which were a gimmick in and of themselves. But the main gimmick was of course the crystal traps, which had 6 molds per element. So needless to say, Trap Team was a bit of a cash grab, but that doesn't take away from how incredible this gimmick is, bringing life to a toy. But yeah, it's a shame that cores like Food Fight were so undershadowed by the Trap Masters. It made them very forgettable and very underrated amongst the rest of the cast. But moving on to Superchargers, now we have vehicles. Now these vehicles, the main gimmick behind them is that there's no base. You can you are free even to just move them around, play with them like they're actual toys. So it adds to the toy aesthetic of Skylanders, and you know, truly makes these toys more playable, since these Skylanders, they're statues, they don't have any moving parts, you know, they're and it's kind of dull to play with a still toy. However, a toy car, on the other hand, is a lot of fun to play around with, and the developers knew this, which is why they got rid of the bases for these vehicles. So first of all, there is the lack of a base with the vehicles, which is a gimmick in of itself, but on top of that, these vehicles were incorporated into 3 different style of gameplay. We had the land racing sections, sky racing sections, and sea racing sections. They were not only racing, but throughout the story mode of the game, you also had combat-based sections with these 3 different gameplay styles as well, and each of them felt distinctive. The sky terrain was more free roaming and hunt them down-esque, then the sea missions were more floaty and puzzle-oriented, and then the land racing missions were speed, point A to point B, with a quick combat scenario implemented into them. And unfortunately, a lot of these were quite boring and didn't take full advantage of the gimmick of the vehicles outside of gameplay, because the gameplay of every single vehicle was the exact same. It's not like a Skylander where, you know, you play as Spyro, very different to you play as Spitfire. No, all of the vehicles were effectively the same thing, which meant that you didn't really need to go out of your way to buy the vehicles unless you really wanted to play with a toy or wanted the new aesthetic within the game. But what's so cool about these cars is that the in-game lore states that they have Rift engines. That's what they're powered by, and that's what makes them so fast. And Rift engines have the capability of creating portals to and through Skylands at wish. So they once again incorporate this gimmick perfectly into Superchargers to once again break the fourth wall and make the Portal Master feel included as part of the game, because the portal itself has completely been disconnected from Skylands, so you can no longer use just the portal to transport your Skylanders from our world, Earth, to theirs. So what you have to do instead is you have to place on your Skylander in companion with a vehicle, so that then their Rift engine can create a rift from Earth back to Skylands again. Yeah, they practically incorporated the gimmick perfectly into Superchargers, even if the gameplay itself isn't the greatest. But now we're going to move on to the final gimmick, and the saving grace of the game at hand, you could say, which is of course going to be Skylanders Imaginators and the Creation Crystals. So yeah, the reason why I say it's a saving grace of this game is because this game most certainly is not my favourite. But when it comes to these creation crystals, when you place them on the portal, you have the capability of creating your own Skylander from the ground up. So, the developers of Skylanders were sick and tired of having fans, of course, submit their own fan art for their own custom Skylanders that they created using their own imagination. They were fed up with it, so they decided to, of course, prevent fans from sending in all of this fan art, to allow the fans the capability to create these characters themselves using these figurines. So, like I say, you could build a Skylander from the ground up using a variety of different parts, and every single part, including the head, body, arms, legs, tails, tassets, headgear, shoulder gear, arm gear, and leg gear, all of those were customizable with, over 50 options each. So the combinations were effectively infinite, and then there was also 10 different battle classes throughout the game that you could use to give your Imaginator different gameplay styles and different weapons, you could say. And so you had a combination of a battle class and an element to create for a, unique chain of attacks based on the two of them in combination with one another. So this Fire Crystal right here, I could select a Quick Shot class to create a Quick Shot character that could also, use fire to dash forward, similar to that of Flame Slinger. So building your own Skylanders from the ground up is awesome, but, since they've kind of been built from scratch, they don't exactly have much brains to call their own, so naturally, they're going to need some teaching, and that's where the senseis come in. The Skylanders created by the developers, so lacking the creativity of the fans, these are what's known as senseis, and they can train your Imaginators. They can increase their level cap and give them access to brand new abilities. So you are literally taking a sensei character, putting it on the portal so you can train up your creation crystal. That's a perfect way to implement, figurines developed by Activision and Toys for Bob alike, so that way they're not solely relying on creation crystal sales. You can also rely on sales of physical figurines at the same time. So once again, it's a very good gimmick, making for one and true saving grace of Imaginators, because you can't fault character creation, especially when it's as in-depth as it was in that game. But now we move on to the ranking of all these gimmicks, and might I just say that this shot looks glorious. But my least favourite gimmick, I've got to admit, is the giants and the micro abilities. Sure, it's awesome to see a Skylander light up, and it conveys a lot of symbolic nature, because light conveys hope, and that just gives you more hope when playing these characters, and once again it also conveys the power of these giants, and there's definitely some really interesting interviews to go back and watch because of it. But when you compare it to all of the other gimmicks, it's just not as groundbreaking or revolutionary as everything else. And then next up is going to be the vehicles, purely because I don't like their gameplay. They might be perfectly implemented into the game that they're from, but that doesn't make their gameplay any less sufferable. Then next up has to be the creation crystals. Whilst I love character creation, the figurines themselves are incredibly boring. Sure, you could you could transfer a design from your creation crystal into your phone, and from your phone you could get it 3D printed, but these were extremely expensive, so only a few Portal Masters got the chance to do so before the online store for the 3D printing shut down. So it's just for lack of an interactable figure that really lets down the creation crystals, and so that's why they're coming in at number 4. But my number 3 would have to be for traps. We're going to put the life one into the portal this time around, which this portal had to be created originally for Trap Team to allow your traps to even be placed into the portal, mind you. And the Trap Team portal design is awesome. I love its little crystalline design, because Trap Team had a theme of crystals, and so for traps, of course, emphasize that theme, and that's what makes them such a powerful gimmick, because you can take a lifeless toy, put it in the portal, and then bring it to life. Sure, it got really frustrating and annoying after a while, hearing the Mike constantly bloat at you one-liners and jokes as the villains were speaking to you, but it's still a really creative gimmick, and it really drew you in as a player to emphasize the Portal Master element of the game. And that's where my main problem with the number 2 gimmick comes in. Swap Force and Swapping is definitely my second favourite gimmick, because you can take a physical figurine, you can rip it apart, and put it back together with a unique looking combination that is so interactive, and it changes up the gameplay so significantly, and it's so encouraged that it elevates the quality of its respective game. So there's no denying that it's brilliant, but unfortunately they don't do much in Swap Force and this gimmick to really feel and make you invested in the world. You don't really feel like a Portal Master, you just feel like you're casually playing through the game, because Portal Masters are very rarely referenced in Swap Force, so the lack of immersion and fourth wall breaks in this game just makes you feel less included, and because of that the gimmick kind of suffers, which is where my number 1 favourite gimmick, the Toys to Life itself, succeeds. Every single one of these Skylanders has this gimmick, so naturally that's what makes this gimmick so good, and that's what makes it the best. As I opened with, it gave birth to an entire new genre, and so naturally speaking, how can you possibly call any gimmick other than the original the best one that Skylanders has to offer? But now that's going to do it for this here video. I sure hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did, please be sure to smash that subscribe button. We're getting very close to 400 subs, so if we can hit that mile marker before the end of Skytember, I will be doing a huge giveaway that's going to involve a variety of characters from a variety of these games right here, including Imaginators. I will be giving away Senseis as well, so that's why we've got to really push for 400 subscribers, guys. And whilst you're at it, I would also really appreciate you pressing the like button. That way my video will get more recommended to more fellow Skylanders fans and just gain more recognition for the channel. But either way, your support is much appreciated, and I love every last one of you. And that's where this non-scripted video is going to come to an end, and the end of the are also going to be occurring as well, you could say. So thank you so much for watching as always. I'll be seeing you tomorrow for another video within Skytember, and until that moment rises, peace!